He counted the money of the dead, then finally told the world, "Silence, you know, can be louder than gunfire." For decades after World War II, one former German soldier carried a secret that weighed more than any weapon he ever held. He wasn't a frontline fighter. He wasn't storming beaches or charging trenches. His job was quieter, cleaner, and honestly, that made it even more chilling. Because when he finally spoke, he confirmed the machinery of mass murder from the inside. His name was Oskar Gröning. A member of the SS, he was stationed at Auschwitz in 1944. Not as a guard with a rifle, not as a commander barking orders. He worked in administration. He sorted and counted money taken from prisoners as they arrived. Let that sit for a second. People were stepping off trains after days in cattle cars, confused, starving, terrified. They were told they were being resettled, their luggage was taken, their valuables were seized, and Gröning's job was to make sure every banknote, every coin, every hidden bill sewn into clothing was collected and sent back to the German state. He later described himself as a cog in a machine. But this machine ran on human lives. Gröning claimed that when he first arrived, he didn't fully understand what Auschwitz really was. He said he believed Nazi propaganda about enemies of the state. But that illusion didn't last long. One day he witnessed something that never left him. A baby crying on the ramp where prisoners were being selected. An SS guard grabbed the child and smashed it against a truck. No hesitation, no consequences, just routine brutality. Gröning said that moment shattered any remaining denial. He knew then that Auschwitz was not a labour camp. It was a killing centre, and yet he stayed. That's the part that makes history uncomfortable. He didn't pull the trigger, he didn't pour the gas, but he helped the system function. He made sure the stolen wealth of murdered families was neatly processed and accounted for. In 1944, Auschwitz reached its peak killing capacity during the deportation of Hungarian Jews. Around 400,000 people were sent there in just a few months. Historians estimate that roughly 300,000 of them were murdered in gas chambers almost immediately after arrival. Gröning was there during that period. He stood on the arrival ramp. He heard the screams. He saw the smoke from the crematoria. He knew what was happening. And, well, he kept doing his job. After World War II ended, like many others, he blended back into civilian life. He worked in a factory, started a family, became a regular citizen in post-war Germany. For decades, he said nothing publicly about his role. The world moved on. Survivors carried trauma. Graves stayed unmarked. And many perpetrators simply grew old in peace. So, why break the silence after so long? In the 1980s and 90s, Holocaust denial began spreading more loudly in some circles. People were claiming gas chambers were a myth, that the numbers were exaggerated, that it was all propaganda. That angered Gröning. He gave interviews, he spoke on camera. He said clearly that Auschwitz was a place of industrial mass murder. He confirmed that people were gassed, that their belongings were looted, that the system was organized and deliberate. He didn't try to deny his role. He admitted moral guilt. He said he shared responsibility for what happened because he had been part of the operation that made it possible. For survivors, hearing a former SS man confirm the truth mattered. It wasn't just history books anymore. It was a witness from inside the system saying, yes, this happened. I was there. In 2015, more than 70 years after the crimes, Germany put Oskar Gröning on trial. Not for personally killing anyone, but for being an accessory to the murder of 300,000 people. That number was tied to the Hungarian deportations during his time at Auschwitz. The trial was historic. Survivors sat in the courtroom. Some were children when they arrived at the camp. Now they were elderly, facing one of the men who had helped process the belongings of their murdered families. Gröning, then in his 90s, didn't deny the charges. He acknowledged his moral responsibility. He said he asked for forgiveness. But he also said it was up to the victims to decide whether they could forgive. The court found him guilty and sentenced him to prison. He died in 2018 before serving his sentence. For some, it felt like justice came too late. For others, the verdict itself was the point. A legal system finally stating, clearly and officially, that even desk jobs in a death camp carry criminal responsibility. Gröning's story forces a hard question. How many atrocities in history depend not just on killers, but on clerks, drivers, accountants, and administrators who tell themselves they're just doing a job? He wasn't a monster in the movie sense. He was organized, punctual, professional. That's what makes it honestly terrifying. Evil didn't always shout. Sometimes it filed paperwork. His late confession didn't erase the past. It didn't bring back the dead. But it did something important. It punched holes in denial. It gave historians and educators a voice from inside the system. And it reminded the world that silence protects crimes long after the shooting stops. For us here at 0 Hour World War II, this story is a warning wrapped in history. Systems don't become deadly overnight. They are built step by step, form by form, signature by signature, and ordinary people help hold them up. The truth eventually came out. It just took a lifetime. If you found this story powerful and important, make sure you subscribe to 0 Hour World War II and share this with someone who needs to understand how history really works. The past still speaks. We just have to listen.